Recording started.
Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Good morning, good evening, wherever it may be, across the nation or around the world. Once again, you are listening to the VMware Communities Roundtable podcast. This is podcast number 512. My name is Eric Nelson, and with me today I have my regular co-host, Matt Lunga. Matt, today's Wednesday, May 13th, 2020. How you doing?
Eric, I am well. It's another beautiful day in central Pennsylvania. How are you, sir? And how's the color of the bay?
I am doing great, and it has been a little bit rainy, so the bay has been choppy and green. It's been warm. We've had nice 70-degree weather, but we had some late spring to early summer rain. Unusual for California, but vegetable garden and all of the fruit trees definitely liked it. So it is beautiful. So the color of the bay, I would give it a dark, choppy green today because it has been a little bit wet and windy. So there you go. On the show today, we're going to be talking about education and certifications with Karl Childs. Karl Childs is a senior manager of certifications and education. He has been on the show before, back, I think, 2 years ago, Karl. So Karl, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. Glad to be here.
It's always good to have you back. I think it's been too long. It'll be interesting to hear what has changed in the last year or two when it comes to education and certification. And we know that Microsoft started dropping some of their certifications, so I can't wait to get your take on what's actually happening in the certification space. And if you are getting certifications, continue watching. Say hello to all the people out on YouTube. We broadcast on youtube.com/vbarbecue. So you can go over there and see what we look like and give us a like and a subscribe. That would be awesome. So before we get to that, we'll just quickly get through some news. Not much news going on today. Call for papers closed on the 15th, I think, for VMworld. So we're getting ready for that. And that's about the only news I have going on. Matt, I don't know if you've got anything in your neck of the woods that's worth saying. And Corey Romero for vExperts is on vacation.
To Corey's absence, I will say that we are expecting the second half of vExpert applications to open up June 1st, and they will run through June 17th with awards to be sometime in July. Reach out to your local vExpert Pro if you have questions with the application process.
All right. Fantastic. So onward and upward, Karl Childs, you have been here before, but for new listeners and people that maybe didn't listen to the podcast number 386, which was like 2 years ago, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What's your career arc? What do you do at VMware, and how did you get here to begin with?
Sure. So Karl Childs, based in Utah. Been here in Utah for pretty much my entire career. Remotely based for most of my career, actually. So I used to work from home. But I have, currently I'm senior manager over the certification and digital badging programs that you mentioned, which means I'm responsible for not only the certification program, but also the development of the exams, the badging program and development of those exams, as well as the delivery vendors. So I work directly with Pearson VUE and with Credly, who are our platform. So kind of a little bit of a wide responsibility there, but I have a great team that supports me in all of that. I've been at VMware for 5.5 years, approximately. About there, I came over from HP prior to that, where I was with HP for quite a while, doing a lot of work and managing some of their certifications over there. And then prior to that, I came from Novell, so way back in the day, and was helping develop their CNA certifications and a lot of the things that were introduced out there. Started out as actually a training developer. So I would develop training, came out of college, had to get a master's degree with is instructional technology. So adult education, adult psychology, but happened to apply that in IT and have never left IT since then. So it's the different companies there.
It's interesting, the Novell throwback mentioned, because my kid the other day, he's kind of in his 20s, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, check out this cool networking tech that I saw online. You can buy these little connectors that connect to coax cable, and you can actually build a network using coax cable. That's like so cutting edge." I just cracked up laughing.
That's funny.
That's how we were building networks before we had Twisted Pair. So
yeah,
Novell networks and coax.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, interesting career. So now you've been at VMware and, running, helping us, get certifications. A lot of people have certifications. Why don't you give us a summary of, what's the certification process? What certifications do we have out there now for people that might not have gotten their feet wet certifications? And then we'll dive deep into what you've been working on and what's new with all the online stuff and people that can't come to training centers anymore.
Yeah. So, right. Yeah, we talked about that. So, in general, our certifications, as VMware comes out with what we call our strategic priorities or our key initiatives, there's certain areas that are very important where we're making inroads. We're trying to change the industry and enable a lot of things. Our certifications for a long time have aligned up with those priorities. And those priorities haven't really changed in the last while, and there's some transition and transformation happening over the last couple of years that I can speak to, and we're talking a little bit about future. But and so we've had a certification track, for instance, around it's primarily been a vSphere focused exams, but around that data center, modernizing our data centers, our data center virtualization. We've had a track around cloud management and automation, tracks around desktop virtualization. The EUC area, end user computing, and of course network virtualization. So we've been very aligned to those different tracks with their certifications. Within those tracks, we have different levels. So we certify and validate anywhere from an experienced administrator, but an administrator on the technical side type of job role, up through more experienced and senior admins to solution architects to enterprise architects. Our very highest level of certification is very elite. You've got to have a decade of experience at least with a lot of customer-facing experience in order to earn that certification. So it covers quite a breadth on the technical side. I don't manage directly, but we also have sales certifications that are typically more appropriate for partners and our resellers. But I primarily manage the technical certification side. So as a framework, that's kind of a really high-level introduction to our framework.
Nice.
Sorry. And
yeah, I know that when we're talking about just high level, I think there's always questions about how long do these certifications actually stay relevant. And I know that we've been through different iterations of that. What is our current thinking with regards to how long and how often should I be recertifying?
Yeah, so recertification is critical. It's important. You have to keep your skills up to date. It's important that, especially if you're a customer in a customer-facing role, or as a partner, and you're trying to continue to win bids and gain new customers, in order to show or validate your expertise, it's important to keep up to speed with things. So recertification is important, and I make that point because a year and a half ago we got rid of our recertification requirement. That doesn't mean that we got rid of recertification. What it means is we used to say you had 2 years to recertify, and if you didn't recertify in 2 years, you basically kind of had to start over. That's what we got rid of. We determined that, hey, it's not up to us to tell you when to recertify. You decide when it makes sense to you. The longer you take, if you go 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, there's going to be more to catch up on. So your path might be a little bit longer as more time goes by. To upgrade, to recertify, but it's up to you, right? You decide when it's appropriate and when you can make that change. So recertification, it's still very important to stay up to date, but everyone's in a different situation, right? So you just on that. So right now our policy is basically you can still upgrade with if you're within 3 years or 3 versions of our exams, you can upgrade with just a single exam. So it's still, the path is still fairly straightforward. Once it gets older than that, there might be a couple more,
Yeah, I'll throw in my my high level question or comment with that, which is I'm really happy because I have a VI3 infrastructure certification for VCP, and I always didn't like the idea that I earned that thing, and then I never, I'm in marketing, so I'm not sitting around with my home lab trying to get certified. I probably should, but I've always been disappointed that technically I can't say I'm a VCP anymore because I expired, right? But now I can probably say, no, it's up to me to define when I've expired. You can't, of course, get license keys for VI3 anymore, virtual infrastructure 3, but I can still say I got my VCP, right?
Yeah.
Matt, any comments or thoughts before we dive a little deeper?
Sure. Just obviously, Eric, one of the major changes that we've seen in the certification marketplace with the current situation is that what was a traditional in-person exam is now being proctored virtually. So, Karl, could you speak to that, how that change came about from VMware's perspective, why that change was made, and now that it's in place, how are we looking at it going forward?
Yeah. So this was actually something we've been looking at for quite a while. We've been looking at Pearson, and for all sorts of reasons, we haven't quite made that shift over. But what it did, fortunately, with the timing, when we all started to experience the COVID-19 and this pandemic situation we're in, and test centers began to shut down or to close temporarily, we were able to turn the switch relatively quickly and enable that virtual testing. And it's virtual. We've had online testing before, but it was non-proctored. So it was open book. You could bring in your books, your neighbor, whatever, right? You could take the exam. You had 2 hours to take it, and you can use whatever resources. So it was different than a test and a proctored exam. What the new change is you can still take it remotely, but now it's proctored. It feels like, and this is the feedback I've been getting, is candidates, they take it, and once they're in the exam, they say it feels like they're just at a test center. They may be in their bedroom, or in their office, whatever, but it feels like they're in the test center because it's still proctored. You still have a proctor that's watching and making sure that you're not using your neighbor to come in and help pass the exam. So and so the experience feels the same, but enables you now you don't have to travel. We have some cases where candidates are 2 hours to 2 days away from test centers, right? It helps them. They can take it from their locations, as well as just make it easier for even if we have a next door test center, it still makes it easier for us and nicer to stay at home to take it. But the experience really is the same. It's you register the same way, you schedule the time, you just, instead of selecting a test center, you select at home. Besides that, it really is the same experience. And this is, I mentioned we worked on it for a while and just were able to turn that key recently. This is a permanent thing. So it's not something that we came up and decided to do just for today's environment. This is something that even when things get back to our new normal, whatever that new normal is, it'll maintain, it'll stay. So we'll always have that be able to afford you the chance to just take it remotely, that remote proctored exam.
Now, for a student, is there any difference in cost, whether they would take it in person or remotely?
Same cost. Yeah.
Okay.
So same cost today. Yeah. And there is, by the way, with that, we have clarification on those. We, not so much the cost, but the availability of exams. Every, what I call standard exams, all of our VCP, our VCAP design, our badge exams, all of those are available remotely proctored. Our lab exam, our VCAP deploy, our lab exam, it's obviously has a different underlying infrastructure. We're still working. We have to change the way the lab exam, the specs of it, basically, how it speaks to all the test drivers. And so we're going through that development right now to enable that remotely. So I'm hoping, I don't have a timeline on it, but I'm hoping that sooner rather than later as well, we'll be able to deliver those remote proctored.
And for those students that haven't gone through the process before, can you walk us through a little bit of what is involved or what's required with this remote proctoring and how that actually works? Yeah.
So it's to emulate that proctored test center type of environment. The candidate, you would need to be in a secure location. So like my office here, I'm able to shut my door, so it's quiet. When you log on, like I mentioned before, the scheduling and registration is just the same as it ever was. You just, pick the time. You still have to pick a time and day to take the exam, so the proctor is ready for you. When you select that on the day or the time of your test, when you log in, you'll run this little download to test your machine. It basically secures your machine so you can't go out to the web and you can't, it's locked down in a sense. And the proctor will actually ask you to scan your room with your computer. So your computer camera. So you'll actually move to make sure that you are in a secure environment. And you'll show your ID to the proctor on screen as well, just like you would in a test center. So it really emulates that same test center experience. Once you get through those initial steps, those first steps there, and the proctor will guide you through there, and the computer prompts will guide you through that. You click the button to start the exam, and that's where I mentioned it actually comes up with that same interface that you would have had in a test center. So start to take the same exam. Your environment has to remain secure. For instance, if someone walks into the room while you're taking the exam, the proctor will actually stop the exam right away. Because just as in the test center, if someone came up to you, right, the proctor would be like, hey, hold on. So it really is that same environment as a proctor test center. And they'll also make sure you put your phone away and there's nothing on the whiteboard, right? So really, that's really the best way to think of it is you just want to imitate what it would be like to be in a test center for you to take the exam.
Or let some family members know if you happen to be in that situation that do not enter the room and treat it as such.
That's right. Yep. Yeah.
That makes a great option to hear.
That works. And then I like it much better than it was because it was always tricky for me, even in Palo Alto, to get time to get down to a place and end up in a room. So being able to schedule that and just do it remotely is awesome.
Yeah.
Question for you, changing subjects a little bit. So when I get my certifications, where do I collect these things? In the old days, they'd print me out a sheet and I had it and I could hang it on my wall. I assume you can still do that, but I know that there's my VMware integration. Like, how are you tracking your educational progress, and how do I show my boss that I've done this stuff and accomplished this?
Yeah, so there's a platform, a tool. It's called Certification Manager. That when you get certified, you'll get, like if you're a first-time candidate, you pass your exam or you get your certification, you'll get an email. It gives you the links. Says congratulations, right? It gives you the links to the Cert Manager. You log on with the same credentials that you used to take the exam, your MyLearn credentials. Log on to it, and it gives you a few options. One of them is to download that certificate that you mentioned, right? So you can download, you can print that. Another option is you can print out transcripts. Not only your exam is on there, but the training that you've taken. So you could print out a transcript. You could email that transcript to your manager, to your customer, whatever that would be requesting it. So it gives you some flexibility there in sharing it. We've also enabled, it's a different platform, and I've mentioned the badging before. We have tied into, it used to be Acclaim, if anyone's familiar with that. It is now Credly, this platform. Every time you get certified, you also get this digital badge. And this digital badge allows you to do a few more things with it. It allows you to, with just a couple clicks, put this digital badge, which shows that same certification that you've earned, onto your LinkedIn profile, your Facebook profile, there's several other platforms that they have that you can just easily share that. When you share that for LinkedIn, for example, if someone is looking at your profile, sees that badge on there, you've earned this VCP certification, they click on that, it will show them the steps, the requirements you had to go through to earn that. It'll show that it's actually on the back end, it actually validates that it is from VMware. It's a real badge. It is also tied into, this is what I think is cool, it's tied into a national database of jobs, basically. It's driven by dice.com. When you click on that, the certification has certain meta tags associated with it. It will actually show you how in demand that certification is, the different skills that you've validated. It'll show you how in demand those skills are. I think that's pretty cool, especially if you're looking for a job, right, or a career. But it actually shows how relevant your certification is. So there's a lot of power behind that badge that we've added on as well. But so a lot of different ways. So yes, you can print it out, Eric, but a lot of digital ways to show off and to share your achievement as well.
Does it also give you a kind of a roadmap or suggested things that I should actually add in, like blank certifications in my thing that I could say, oh, I should fill in these 6 more?
Right. It's through our VMware Learning Zone platform, which is really our digital video and digital based, all of our digital assets are there around education. There's a capability called Learning Paths. We're just approaching that to start building some of those that will show just what you're stating, to show some of those. They're not dynamically built, but the tracking you through that path is dynamic. So you'll be able to see and just check off. I kind of like checking boxes off. So that kind of thinking, if you like that, it'll show you that prescriptive learning path. We're starting to build and lean towards those. Within the certification manager, it will show you the next level of certification you can earn, as well as on our website. But that's really as sophisticated as it is right now. But
all right,
to give you that next level.
All right, I'm going to jump into a question that we have on YouTube chat, just because we're trying to stay live with people that are reviewing things. So somebody from YouTube chat says, can we expect the DCV exams to be upgraded to the vSphere 7?
Yes. In fact, next week, our SMEs are writing those items. So yeah, so it is, yes. So VCP as well as the VCAPs were being updated to, those exams will be updated to vSphere 7. Yep. And that's, if I can kind of launch off of that question as well and share, I mentioned those different tracks that we have today, and aligned to strategic priorities. VMware continues to transition, right? VMware continues to evolve, and our certification tracks are looking to evolve. So there's things like vSphere with Kubernetes and all of the Kubernetes sides and the modern apps and security. VMware just bought Carbon Black, and so we have this big play in security now. You'll start to see in the future our certification tracks. We're not getting rid of tracks. We're not upending and throwing everything out, but you'll see an evolution and an introduction of certifications that are aligned to these new priorities as well. And that vSphere 7 and the vSphere with Kubernetes, we can build other badges on top of that to recognize. That's all part of this framework that we can enable. So, and one of the things that we've done is created inside VMware, created a process and a way to keep exams more up to date and more current as well. So you'll see as new versions of products come out, we have an exam that's based on a product. Over time, you'll see that we're able to keep tighter onto those versions, tighter version control as well. So it's kind of a long answer to your question, but yes, when there's a major product update, you can expect that the exams will be updated to reflect those.
Obviously, Karl, we wouldn't hold you to it, but do you have a rough roadmap for our listeners out there of when you would expect maybe even a beta test to be available for vSphere 7 on DCV?
Yeah, this summer. Right, so U.S. summer, Northern Hemisphere summer, but we're looking at around August kind of time frame.
Okay, and I know sometimes in the past that exams and even the courseware has been offered as beta initially, and then even offered at a discount with those beta classes. Might there be a chance for some discounts for our listeners?
So we've actually moved. This happened probably 2 years ago or so. We moved into what we call an operational beta, which is, so we don't do the old traditional beta process to where it's a discounted exam. We open it up. Once we get 300 people take it, we close it for a while, and we re-swizzle the exam, and then we open it up. We've moved away from that process, which enables us to get it onto production almost from day one. And we still have all of the statistics and the psychometrics behind it are still happening. But it allows us to get out earlier, but it does mean there's not that traditional beta at a discount anymore. It is just the exam that's in production for it, but it allows us to get it out in August versus November.
I have a question with regard to. I know we've had credits along the way. Major accounts have had these, some kind of credits, and I don't know if they're educational credits or I've heard them. And people always try to use these credits to come to VMworld, and some of them get away with it and try to do all kind of things. Do you guys take these type of enterprise credits if you're buying software from us?
Yep, we do. Yep, education. That's exactly what they're called, educational credits. But yes, we do for not only our standard, all the exams we've been talking about, but even for things like our VCDX defense, in-person defenses things, we take them for that as well.
Nice. Okay, so nice to know that these things are real, and they can go on dice.com and see, what kind of jobs are out there that require X amount of certifications. That's good. Nice that you're going across different audiences, and as we grow, that makes sense. So just recapping here before we get into my next topic, which is the reason I kind of reached out to you, which is, and somebody's about ready to ask Matt, you have a VCAP question. Why don't you take it? And then I'll transition.
Sure. So Karl, one of the things that we've seen for advanced level certifications as it relates to, let's call it the original suite, the DCV, is that the VCAP has been paused for a little bit, if you will. So although we could certify as a current year as a 2020 VCAP for either design or deploy, the test itself was based around 6.5. So obviously we've seen a couple releases now with 7.0 being GA, and obviously 6.7 well into multiple iterations. What's the roadmap there? I know that there are several of our listeners that are out there that are pursuing advanced certifications and sort of a little bit of limbo of, well, do we pursue the 6.5 or wait till 7, or will maybe 6.7 be out there? Can you give us a little bit of a roadmap of where that VCAP for DCV might be headed?
Yeah, and I will admit that there was that little bit of limbo, that infrastructure I mentioned before. We've been doing a lot of work and changes in that infrastructure. And part of that was the reason why we did fall a little bit into that limbo, a gap, as we've been doing a lot of changes and work so that we can make a more stable environment and a lot more available, broader availability for it as well. So, so I, first admit that you're right. There was a little bit of limbo there, a gap in it. We actually have for a 6-7 exam, there is one that's been developed, and we're actually just now finalizing some with that new infrastructure to get that available. We're actually moving into the 7, and that seems like a little bit step behind because 7's out, right? But we are going to have that out. But so there will be a 6-7 exam available, and the 7 is undergoing. We've already defined the scope of that exam, and we're just going into development for that. So that will fall. That'll lag a little bit behind the VCP, but we are working on that 7 VCAP deploy. So this calendar year, we will have, it'll be caught up basically. We'll have both the 6-7 and 7 out available.
Okay, and so for 6-7, we will see design and deploy.
The design is actually out on 6-7 right now.
Okay.
So so this is just the deploy that was a little bit more lag behind.
And that's again around some of the lab infrastructure that are making the change and switch over.
Right. Yeah, I haven't talked a lot about that publicly just because we've been some of it since it's inside, right? Or stuff, but that's the reason why you've seen that limbo a little bit. I like how you said limbo. Yeah.
I have another question as long as we're in this space. We're talking about online VMworld, in late September. We've had internal conversations about taking hands-on labs and what does it mean, and how do we provide, motivation to come sit through more online content than we already get in the days of COVID-19? One of the ideas was, when you're taking labs, can this feed into your educational requirements to be able to learn enough to sit for an exam? And we've had conversations like that. And I guess I'll put that question to you, not particularly from VMworld perspective, but do you guys tie in with HOLs as learning material? How do I know what I need to learn in order to go take one of these exams? I mean, obviously, I think you guys obviously have courses, but there are other ways to get up to speed to be able to sit for an exam.
Yeah, that's actually a great, timely question, Eric. The hands-on lab team has become true and fast partners of ours here over the last 6 months or so. They've always been a strong partner with us in a lot of education areas, but with testing specifically, they've done a lot of work. They've actually helped us with this underlying infrastructure that I've been talking about. We're also right now working on ways and thinking and brainstorming. So I don't really have anything to announce that's available, but we're right now working on ways to give, in a sense, a practice exam, right? So you can go through a little bit more robust than just the hands-on guided demo right now, the hands-on lab is, but even more that follows the path and the objectives of our certifications. So you get even a hands-on experience with that. So we're actually right now working with some of that, and DCV will be the first one that we are going to model and pilot with that, but to offer some of that. There's been some individuals in our community that have developed some practice exams in the past around that, and those have been fantastic. We've tried to promote those. I haven't seen recent ones that have been updated on there, but anytime if the community out there, if you guys have developed or have found ways, let me know. One of the questions is how the community can help us. Let us know if it fits that objective and stuff. We're happy to also help promote that and at least make it, let our community know, right, that there's other ways to practice and get experience. But yeah, over after the next few months and years, even in partnership with Hands-On Lab, there'll be more of exactly what you're talking about, Eric. More of that really closely aligned hands-on capabilities to hands-on lab.
I know that for those Cloud Cred guys that did work over there, we did have VCP Cloud Cred tasks that we work with education to kind of prep you. And I know that people also used NSX labs to get access to NSX, and then they would break out of the NSX lab, get a console, do a lot of learning, and then go take the NSX VCP course, right? I know guys that I was like, how did you get NSX set up on your home lab to be able to do this? Oh, we never did. We just went to the HOL, broke out, or got the prompt, and then started learning stuff enough to go sit for their VCP NV or whatever the brand was for that certification. So interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've never said our audience isn't smart, huh?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Very clever. Yeah.
That's neat. Okay, so now we're kind of transitioned into my favorite topic, which is Microsoft announced, I think 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago, that they're not going to be providing MVP certification, that's going away, and that what they'll do is they're giving cloud certification to Azure, right? You go get your Azure certification, which has a lot of their capabilities built in, but it's basically all cloud formatted, right? Which I looked at that and went, wow, they're like they're getting out of certification for data center operations. And they're kind of switching everybody to their be Azure or too bad for you, right? And I know we're not going to do that because we're big on prem, and I can see where Microsoft's like, yeah, I don't know, they're big on prem but they're companies are moving to exchange servers on cloud because why not, right? But I guess the question is, how do we see cloud start to change what we're offering from a service perspective? Because some of the stuff is, like we get Carbon Black, or we get Cloud Health, right? Is a good example of that, where it's just an AWS app, right? That you're running in AWS. Does training really change that much when you were talking about the cloud apps that VMware has been acquiring?
The content doesn't, right? We're still teaching that content. Maybe the way that we offer it and the structure that we enable the community to access it, that may change. So for instance, from a certification perspective, I mentioned digital badging, and I've talked about how that's tied to certification, but we also have standalone or specialist types of badges that really start to fill in or apply to those sort of off-prem approaches, or these individual, like we have a VMC on AWS badge, specialist badge.
Right.
For those they're not handling the on-prem side of it, right? They just need to validate the expertise on the AWS side, the VMC on AWS. So we have this way to still recognize, and there's courses associated with that teach the off-prem or the SaaS-based types of approaches and these different products that we come. And you're right, we're not moving away from our on-prem. Our core career certifications, our VCPs, a lot of that is still based with that on-prem. vSphere is still driving a lot of capabilities, around cloud, and we have people and administrators that are still working with the on-prem and that infrastructure. So we're not moving away from that, but we're adding, well, Siri's talking to me, but we're adding on capabilities or ways to still offer the more modular, that's a great way to look at it, the SaaS base and those off-prem type of approaches as well. And so we're not making people go through that on-prem approach. They still can get badges through off-prem with off-prem products and solutions.
Do you guys look from a competitive standpoint? I know you charge money. There's competiting offerings when it comes to training and certifications. Do you guys look at other competitors and say, they're moving here, we should respond? Or you don't really even consider any of that? You're just offering training for ourselves? And this is almost like a 2-part question. Then I'll let Matt chime in because I've been dominating here for the last minute or two. Are there standards by which you try to figure out what to offer? Because you're, in a sense, in charge of a lot of people's, brand, right? Like what they get to say they know, right? And the badges and all that. 1, do you look at competitive situations? And 2, do you have like thresholds that a subject has to hit before you decide to warrant it with a certification or a badge?
Right. So yes, we do look at other programs on a fairly regular basis, not so much to drive our decisions, but to help us get good ideas, to see what's working, see what's not working, to see what, if something feel right. And so we try to keep up to date as well. And we're always, VMware is listed in things like salary surveys and impact surveys from IDC and things like that. And so we're paying attention to those to make sure we're doing the things that keep us relevant for our communities and for the industry. So we look and compare that way. As far as making the decisions on what we're certifying and teaching on, it does come down to a lot of our companies' go-to-market approach. I've mentioned those key priority areas, those strategic priority areas, right? That drives a lot of our decisions on where we need to certify and build on. So when we're talking about modern apps as a key new strategy for us, we're looking at modern apps and building up, and with the Pivotal acquisition, working with that team very closely to start to migrate their certs and also expand on their certs, the security. So those are it's the company itself that tends to drive a lot of the content that we do build to stay aligned to that. So it's a little bit of a hybrid approach in a way. We do look at both.
I want to just ask a quick follow-up. Which is, for me, Kubernetes is coming, right? And I'm doing Kubernetes stuff for VMworld. I'm building interesting apps. We're doing some fun things with Raspberry Pis. But what I realized is that I haven't learned a lot about it. I need to still consume a lot of content. I need to take some HOLs. vSphere 7 just came out with it. William Lamb does, some readmes on how to get started and doing it. There's other guys that are showing how to do it quicker. But there's almost like a saturation of information that has to happen before I would even be close to being ready to take an exam or take some courses. So I would think you would have to judge when is something mature enough and there's enough information out there to learn in order to then certify me. Right.
Yeah. And there is, and that learning zone that I mentioned before is a great place to start for that, because you go out to the learning zone, and right now, by the way, premium license learning zone is free. Because of the COVID-19, the pandemic, VMware Education has made that offer, right? So you can get that for free right now and get access to a lot more content than you otherwise would have to pay for. You can go out there and you can search for things like Kubernetes and start to get some of those things you're talking about, little nuggets, and start to gather that. The formal training that we're used to, the structured training in class or virtual training, that's the 3-day, 5-day, right, that we're kind of used to. For that example, Kubernetes is actually very imminent. There's going to be a class that's coming out very imminently on that. And we're hoping to follow that up with a specialist badge as well. That's been in discussions right now as we continue to try to develop things like that. So that's one of the examples of those things that are important, and those key initiatives. We do follow up with content. We try to enable the audience. It's all around enablement. The organization I belong to, in fact, is even named after enablement. We want to really enable our communities to be able to perform this thing in a way that just helps, as we help your brand, and that helps VMware's brand, right? Helps to get that out there. So we want to make sure that you guys are educated and enabled on that as well.
Karl, if a listener would be interested in that educational offer that's out there, what URL should they go to?
For the learning zone?
Yes, sir.
Is that what you mean? Go to, here, I'll tell you, I just gotta look it up real quick. It is.
And I believe that's for a period of 6 months that they've courteously extended that out.
That's right. Yep. So here you go. So if you go to vmware.com/education-services, and you can get to a link from there, but then the rest of the URL would be /learning-zone.
I'm sure we can put that in the show notes and share that out with everyone. But I think that's a great offer that the community would be interested in. So one of the things that you had mentioned was badges, and obviously we have a VMC on AWS, but that whole entire platform is obviously extended out now with last week's announcement to GCP and previously on Azure. So do you see other specialist badges coming for those other major cloud providers as well to match what the AWS offering is?
Yeah, potentially. It's always the question of and Eric kind of asked the question about priority and resources and balancing out to figure out what we can even develop. On there, Eric, you asked the question about threshold. Those are the criteria that we look at is what can we really build with our own resources and what should be the most important ones. So we're looking at other things like around the Carbon Black and continuing the VMC and AWS and so potentially with things like Azure. Potentially, I don't know right now what will come out in there. But the nice thing about the way that our badge program, our strategy is, we don't always necessarily have to build it ourselves. We can curate content and still allow that. So especially from the partner side, is there's different requirements from the partner side to gain training on those areas, and that's part of it. We will have credentials that back that up. We will have training that backs that up. It may look a little different because we're curating it versus creating it and building it in-house. But we do try our best to provide those resources for enablement that I keep talking about.
I do have
I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
No, there was just one from chat that I want to get to before it gets too late. Then I'll let you go, Matt. So
absolutely, let's go over to the chat.
Yeah, YouTube chat. Any plans to remove the requirements to have attended an official course before before being allowed to take an exam?
That has been in discussion for as long as I have been here.
I remember when I took VI3, people were asking, do we keep, no, you have to take this week-long course. It's $3,000. I remember us having that conversation 12 years ago.
And it used to be tighter requirements, like it had to be that one course. And we've loosened that up and recognized that there could be other, like you have that skills, take a more advanced course, and that would still count. If you're able to complete the higher level course, we know that you have the lower level skills. Right now, we assume the course objectives are part of our, when we build out our scope for our certifications, part of that, we don't test on everything in those courses because we know you're getting that expertise through training. So that's part of our definition around our certification, which is why it's required as of now. As of now, there's no changes to that. Is it being considered? Yes, continually. We're always looking at that and evaluating that decision, but no changes as of right now.
So, Karl, you had mentioned just as a little teaser there, the VCP DCV for 7 in August. What else that's on the roadmap for sure that maybe you can tease for us a little bit to say that might be coming out? What are some other either training or certifications that we could look at for the second half of 2020?
Yeah, and I mentioned being tighter and starting to close that timeline between new product introductions. NSX T3, there's new content that is just around the corner and new certifications aligned with that you'll see start popping up, new exam versions, VRA 8, and really 8.1, if not some of the 8.2, I think is what it is, most current, but it's starting to, so we're close to that. That's right around the corner as well. So you'll see that being released here at the VCP level, coming up very soon. Our Workspace 1 was just released to the latest version, the 20. I don't know what it is, 20, just last month. So that came out, and so that one's brand new and up to date. So yeah, I'm kind of we're starting to come up on this era of tightening those timelines and being more up to date on the exams. And so as you get these new our major products that come out, the solution areas around those, you'll see our certifications start to be updated more currently, more quickly on a lot of those. So this summer, yeah, there's a lot around the cloud, the VRA, NSX, the things I mentioned, vSphere 7. As well as more of some of the off-prem, or even some of those new security and like pivotal things that I was talking about as well.
And just in general, what tends to be the most popular of the tracks? If you could break it down, even rough percentages.
Yeah, it's so DCV, which has been historically our vSphere aligned, but really it's our data center virtualization certification. That's still by far the most popular track. So even, we have this discussion about where things are going with off-prem and all that kind of things, but there still is this core, infrastructure need, right? You've got to have these vSphere for a lot of our community. And so that has by far been the most. Cloud is very much ramping up. Cloud has become more popular. NSX, our NV, our network virtualization track that's probably had, that really is second as far as volume. Our cloud, those tends to have a little bit quicker ramp on it right now. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how those kind of come together when they do that.
It reminds me of kind of like high school athletic programs where football funds everything, right? And then badminton and golf and all these kind of live in the environment and maybe get a little extra money for their end of year party, because the reality is data center still drives a lot of our business, but it enables a lot of the more interesting side things that are also important, but maybe just not as big a revenue generators.
Right.
Yeah, interesting.
It's a great analogy.
One of the things that I want to get to before we run out of time is VMworld and Certification Day, or I don't know what you call that day, but I know there at VMworld, there's a place where everybody can come a day before and sit down for exams. Are you going to try to run something like that virtually this year?
Yeah. Some of those details are still being worked out and exactly what it's going to look like and when, but same type of approach to offer some different classes, have some of our instructors, our VCIs, deliver some of that content. We've been talking about exam preps that we've delivered in the past, some things like that. So I don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet, but we will offer that as well as potential opportunities for discounted testing, which we always have had.
I meant to say, I have it in my notes here, and discounts.
Yeah.
Because there was like some percentage off for sitting at an exam. And to be fair, it was cheaper to run a big exam. So you got to, VMware didn't have to spend the cost of having a proctor for 100 people or 40 people in a class. You could have a proctor for 200. Yeah. So it was more efficient, so we could pass that on to customers.
And a lot of that is still going through the committee and the agreement and all the approval stages, right? So I don't necessarily guarantee it, but I think I'm pretty safe to say that we'll continue to have those same types of discounts and things going on for it.
Nice. Then I have one obscure thing, which is VCDXs. Are you guys involved with the VCDX, program and how you become a VCDX? And I know a lot of people have never made it to VCDX, but what's the likelihood of somebody that gets my VCP, the different ones, and I'm working on that? Give us a 1 minute elevator pitch on VCDX.
Yeah.
And how do I get a number, and what number are you at these days?
Yeah.
Maybe you don't know this, but I thought I'd throw it out.
We're still just under 300. So you still got a chance to get in the 200.
So that's slowed down, because when you first did VCDXs, it went pretty quick up to 100 or 200. Right. That's like 6 years ago or some number like that.
Yeah, it was when I joined the company, we were in the high 100s. And so, so we're still just under the 300. It's an elite. It's a tough certification to get. It stays elite for a reason. It does take, for someone to just go through the steps, if they learn just enough and earn their VCP and then learn just enough to get a VCAP, they're probably still not quite at the point to earn that VCDX. It really does require some good time of experience, especially customer-facing experience, of really talking to customers and identifying the requirements that customer has. We're not talking about technical specifications at the VCDX level as much. We're really talking about what kind of solutions can be built to meet a customer requirements, to fit within a customer's scope and the restrictions that customer may have, the budget that they have, things like that. So we really are designing, it really is aligns to that enterprise architect type of job. And so if you haven't had, the candidates that come in that have had that real life experience of being an architect are the ones that tend to be more successful. It doesn't mean that you won't be if you don't have that experience, but the recommendation we always give is if you're not in that type of job, volunteer, try to do something to get some of that customer-facing experience, because that really is critical for that VCDX.
We had a guest on last week. His name was Fabian Lenz, and it was interesting. Podcast 511. He did vGPUs, and he was implementing that with a customer that had 1,000 vGPU environments, right? And just the time and that it took for him to think through architectural and then implement it. It's kind of like you do those type of projects, and you do like 15 of those, so that you can become like a PhD expert in vGPU deployment. Then you apply for your PhD, and you get assigned a mentor, right? Or like a professor. It reminds me of getting your PhD to a large extent, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to go up in front of a board and do, that's a really cool program. I wish I had time and I was in the industry to do it, because that would be fun to get a PhD in architecture for building data centers. That's pretty slick.
Yeah, it is a neat program, and it takes that time to experience.
So shout out to everybody that's gotten their VCDX, and for you guys that run that type of program. We're all in awe of anybody that's able to make that happen, from putting that program on to actually, anybody that's gone through it. Whenever any VCDX yells at me, I go, "Oh, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can fix something." Because if you're telling me I did something wrong, I clearly have done something wrong, right? So, that's part of education, right? And branding and coming up to those levels, you just get really smart. Okay, so we're running up to the top of the hour. We have a few minutes left. I always ask guests, and Matt, I'll let you if you have anything else you want to do, but. I always ask, how can the community help, and what are your plans this year? Obviously, we're talking about VMworld. We're all dealing with COVID. But any goals or aspirations you have when you have to talk to your manager, what do you tell them you're going to accomplish this year, and then how can we help you accomplish that?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. Yeah, I think, and I was trying to find hear the URL. I might, if I can, send it to you later. But
Sure.
there is, the first is, and I kind of made this call out already, that if you're building things around practicing and offering opportunities, mentoring people, we love to see that. You mentioned the mentor specifically with VCDX. We'd like to see that across all the certifications. The vExpert community is hugely beneficial in that way in helping spread the word on a lot of things, but we love our community helping our community. And so if there's things that you're doing in a more of a structured approach, blogs and stuff, let us know. Let me know. And there may be ways that we could potentially help to share that and to get that out to other people that are looking through our Slack channels and things like that. The second would be when we do our development of our content, we use subject matter experts. Me and my team are not subject matter experts. We don't know everything there is to know about everything. And so we have to bring in the experts from the field. And we use, some people may think that we just use VMware employees for that. We don't. We have to have partners, customers, representatives that are out there in the field actually doing the job that we're certifying on, and we bring them in. And so there's a site where you can come in and actually apply to be a subject matter expert and help us develop this content. And there's some benefits that come with that. For one, you don't have to take the exam. You just get credit for it because you're helping build it. But it really helps us make sure that these things are relevant, that we're not just assuming that we know what the scope of this exam should be, for instance. So that's the other second call out. Volunteer. We have a huge database that we invite and we go through and pull through and have you help participate on there. And right now it's all virtual. There may be more opportunities in the future. We don't know what the new normal will be like. We used to do them more face-to-face. There may be an opportunity in the future to be face-to-face. Don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but there's a lot of benefits that come from contributing your time as well for that.
And Karl, to that end, if someone would want to follow yourself and VM Education Services in general on Twitter, what are those handles?
So there is you can follow me personally if you'd like, which is just at Karl Childs. The VMware Education Services handle, and I'm just looking to make sure I tell you right, is at VMware Education.
Nice.
That's the one that we share through, and that's primarily through Twitter. We also have a blog. If you go to our certification site, that's vmware.com/certification. There is also a link there to our blog. We do a lot of announcements and notices on our blog as well. And
for those listeners that are podcasting along with us, Karl is KarlChilds at Karl Childs.
Thank you, Matt. Yep.
Well, very good. Very good. I think we've learned a lot. And I just have to get one note because I'm going to tweet this out later, which is what's the name of the educational portal service that is free right now?
The VMware Learning Zone.
VMware Learning Zone.
Yeah. And
what does it normally cost?
Oh, that's a good question. You might get me on that one. I know the premium license is $1,300. I'm not sure.
All right, that's close enough. I'll say a 1K premium license now going free during
whatever COVID. It is. It's free for the next 6 months, I believe.
That's right. Yep.
Free for next. I'm taking notes here so I can have my tweets set up because that's what I learned from the podcast today. I also learned that you can sit down and take these things online. That's, I think, fairly developed now, so that's good. And yeah, sounds great. Karl Childs, again, thank you very much for showing up on the show. Again, we have to have you back in fewer than 200 podcasts, which is like a couple of years, like 150 podcasts since you've been on. So we'll bring you back sooner than later this time. Thanks again for coming on the show. As always, it's great to get you guys on and share with our community, how the work behind in the kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It's been fun. I appreciate you getting me on.
And in the last 2 minutes, we'll do the V barbecue report, which is, I don't see Tony Foster on, but I did make barbecued ribs last night. I might tweet out the photos. I used a dry rub, and I used the snake charcoal model where you make a 2-column row of charcoal all the way around your grill, and then you light one end, and you just let those kind of burn from right to left all the way around. And that slow cooks because there's only like 4 or 5 pieces of charcoal burning at any given time in the barbecue. And so that smokes it and takes about 2 hours to do a nice slab of ribs, which we did. And we used Mr. Stubbs Barbecue out of Texas. So say hi to Tim Davis. It was very, very, very good barbecue. It makes it good. And then I measured the temp of the ribs with just a temperature probe. Then I took it up to, I think, 185, which for pork ribs is pretty good. And those turned out really good. And if you make a full slab and you're just you and your significant other, that'll last you 4 or 5 days, depending on how many you eat at once. But a couple ribs every day or so, it works out well. So that's the V Barbecue Report. We will be back here again next week. I think we got Eric from NSXT to come on. I don't know his last name, but we are going to have him on. And there's a cool vMotion blog out there that a guy from Europe did. I don't know his name either, but we're going to invite him on and see if we can get him to talk about the new things in V7 with vMotion. It's a pretty good blog article. Until then, everybody stay sane, be happy. Life is good. Talk to you later. Matt, thanks for being here. We'll see you again next week as well.
Take care, Eric. Take care and be safe.